Okay, that's the book I wrote, and I want to tell you a little story here. I was at the Royal Air Force Museum, just outside of London. One day, I just went there to see what was there, and of course, I got to see the Lancaster, that great bomber from World War II. And then I went into the gift shop, and when I went into the gift shop, the greatest song I'd ever heard was playing. I love this song, so I go to the counter and I say, I'd like to buy the CD. And they look around and they go, the only copy we have is the one that's playing. That was it. I said, well, I've got to have it. And I said, so finally they get it out and they sell it to me. And the song that I heard was called Run, Rabbit, Run. So that evening I had dinner with some British friends of mine, and I told them, you wouldn't believe it, I just found the greatest song of all time. And I told them about Run, Rabbit, Run, and I didn't know that they would ever stop laughing. They just took me over the coals there for Run, Rabbit, Run, which was an old music hall song. The music halls were kind of like vaudeville here in the States. They were pretty much variety shows. And Flanagan and Allen were quite popular singers who trod the boards, as they say. So that was a little bit behind it. Now, let's go look at Churchill's history. He becomes Prime Minister in May of 1940, had been First Lord of the Admiralty. He gives his blood, toil, tears, and sweat speech, which Randolph did a great job of last night. I thought he really delivered it well. We got the Dunkirk problem that's been in a movie recently. That lasts until June 3rd. So this is his first month in office. Italy's going to declare war on the UK and France. Over 10 British troops are captured in France on June 12th. June 13th, German troops are in France. Churchill called President Roosevelt along the line to ask for help, and of course, no help was coming. And then we have Saturday, June 15th in Chequers. He's been in office just a little over a month, okay? And this is from John Colville's book. And that evening, or that afternoon and evening, Churchill was getting a lot of phone calls, a lot of telegrams. He was not getting any emails. And Colville said it was the most dramatic and the most fantastic evening I ever spent, because so much of the future of the world was hanging in the balance at this time. Finally, they have dinner at 9:30 with Duncan and Diana Sunday's, that was his daughter and son-in-law, Professor Lindemann, and Colville. Churchill was in a funk, according to Colville. Churchill said the only thing he and Hitler had in common was a horror of whistling. Well, then he cheers up. And he's offering everyone cigars and spasmodically murmuring, bang, bang, bang goes the farmer's gun. Run, rabbit, run, 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 run. In the midst of this crisis, he's reciting the lyrics to Run, Rabbit, Run. And when I bought the CD, I mean, it had Churchill's picture on the front, but I just didn't, I thought, well, it's, songs about the same time he was World War II or something like that. I just never really thought a connection was there. Well, I think it's, if I can get this thing to work, I think it's time we hear a little Run, Rabbit, Run.
On the farm, every Friday, on the farm, is rabbit pie day. So every Friday that ever comes along, I get up early and sing this little song.
Everybody?
Run, rabbit, run, rabbit, run, run, run. Run, rabbit, run, rabbit, run, run, run. Bang, 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 bang goes the farmer's gun. Run, rabbit, run, rabbit, run, 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 run. Run, rabbit, run, rabbit, run, run, run. Don't give the farmer his fun, fun, fun. He'll get by without his rabbit pie. So run, rabbit, run, rabbit, run, run, run. Run, rabbit, run, rabbit, run, run, run. Run, rabbit, run, rabbit, run, run, run. Bang, 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 bang goes the farmer's gun. Run, rabbit, run, rabbit, run, 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 run. Run, rabbit, run, rabbit, run, run, run. Don't give the farmer his fun, fun, fun. He'll get by without his rabbit pie. So run, rabbit, run, rabbit, run, run, run.
Now, doesn't that make you feel better? It make you feel a whole lot better. But popular with school children during World War II. I learned all of this later. I just like the song. I love the song when I first hear it. And the question is, I'm friends with other biographers and met a number of stars, and they were talking about how school children during the 40s and after World War II loved this song. And so I wondered if some of the 60s rock stars had sung Run, Rabbit, Run. Well, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. There's a song that says, "Speak to me, breathe," contains the lyrics to run, or it contains the lyrics, "Run, Rabbit, Run." The Clash, good punk group, I'm sure you all know this one. Their song "Bank Robber" has lyrics, "Run, Rabbit, Run." Paul McCartney and Wings, their song "Band on the Run" has lyrics, "For the rabbits on the run." So, all of these great 60s rock stars that you love started their career with Run, Rabbit, Run. It's a very powerful song. Winston Churchill loved Noel Coward. Coward was a kind of a bon vivant actor, comedian, and all of that. And Churchill supported King Edward III wanted to marry Wallis Simpson, and justified it by saying he should be able to marry his cutie. Noel Coward replied, "English doesn't wish for a queen cutie." And Churchill, of course, Coward had plays on the West End and a lot of musicals. He was, again, a singer and act and all of this. He was rather, shall we say, flamboyant. And the king wanted to knight him early on, and Churchill stopped it because he didn't want some backlash to come on Coward. But one of the songs that Coward wrote was "Mad Dogs and Englishmen," so I think we should hear that one.
In tropical climes there are certain times of day when all the citizens retire to take their clothes off and perspire. It's one of those rules the greatest fools obey, because the sun is far too sultry and one must avoid its ultraviolet ray. The natives grieve when the white men leave their huts, because they're obviously, definitely nuts. Mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday sun. The Japanese don't care to, the Chinese wouldn't dare to. Hindus and Argentines sleep firmly from 12 to 1, but Englishmen deter siesta. In the Philippines they have lovely screens to protect you from the glare. In the Malay states there are hats like plates which the Britishers won't wear. At 12 noon the natives swoon and no further work is done, but mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday sun. Such a surprise for the eastern eyes to see that though the English are effete, they're quite impervious to heat. When the white man rides, every native hides in glee, because the simple creatures hope he will impale his solar topee on a tree. It seems such a shame when the English claim the earth, that they give rise to such hilarity and mirth. Mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday sun. The toughest Burmese bandit can never understand it. In Rangoon, the heat of noon is just what the natives shun. They put their Scotch or rye down and lie down. In a jungle town where the sun beats down to the rage of man and beast, the English garb of the English Sab merely gets a bit more creased. In Bangkok, at 12 o'clock they foam at the mouth and run, but mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday sun. Mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday sun. The smallest Malay rabbit deplores this foolish habit. In Hong Kong, they strike a gong and fire off a noonday gun to reprimand each inmate who's in late. In the mangrove swamps by the python romps, there is peace from 12 to 2. Even caribous lie around and snooze, for there's nothing else to do. In Bengal, to move at all is seldom if ever done. But mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday, 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 out in the midday sun.
And you see how he plays with language so much. Of course, that was, Churchill played with language a lot. Roger Miller once said about his, for those of you from England, Roger Miller was a country star. Actually, he replaced the Beatles at the top of the charts in '65 with King of the Road on the BBC. Roger Miller said, "I like to take out words and play with them." He had that playful view of language. Quebec Conference going on. It ends in August of 1943, and after the conference, Churchill, with his daughter Mary, goes to a fishing village for a little holiday, and the British delegates, who were part of that entourage, are coming over for lunch and dinner. And one of them says, "Winston in terrific form, singing Dan Leno songs and other favorites of the Hills of 40 years ago, together with the latest Noel Coward." And that's going to lead us to Dan Leno.
There's not a place in all the land like the good old Tower of London, where everything is awfully grand in the glorious Tower of London. For the walls are high and the dungeons deep, refreshments there are very, very cheap, but the beer it is not warranted to keep in the good old Tower of London. Sing hey, sing ho, for the beer in the Tower of London. There's no place on the face of the earth like the Tower of London. If you've never been there, go again. It's a glorious place. Everything old. Now, in the first place, when you visit the Tower of London, it's free. But you have to pay a shilling to go in. And the first ancient item you see is the man that takes the money at the door. Then you pass through the refreshment room, which is the oldest refreshment room in the tower. and the only one. And there's some very ancient items in the refreshment room, such as the buns and ginger beer and the barmaids and whatnot. Good day, ladies. Do you wish to see the tower? Splendid day to see the tower, nice and gloomy. Oh, yes, I can show you around the tower. Of course, I'm not allowed to do so, but I can do so. Now, in the first place, this is the refreshment room. Of course, if you want anything in the refreshment room, of course, now is the time. You don't care for anything. No, thank you. Only as we go along, there's no oranges or ginger beer to be had, and of course you feel faint, so have to come back to the refreshment room. No, you don't care. No, don't want anything. No, I do. Still, we'll proceed. Standing with our backs to the refreshment room, we get a lovely view of the tower. Follow me, ladies. Standing with your back to the tower, you get a lovely view of the refreshment room. Now you see that man over there, that's the sentry. He stands there night and day with his gun fixed, bayonet fixed, and his eye always on one spot, and that is the refreshment room. For it's a splendid time to see the happy hour. Everything is free, and there's nothing for to pay, but if you haven't got a bob or two, you'd better stay away from the good old Tower of London. So,
this is the kind of stuff that Churchill liked. Mary Soames, his daughter, gave her father a complete set of Gilbert and Sullivan operas, which I knew he enjoyed for Christmas on 1943. And he doesn't get a chance to listen to it right then, but he listens to it a little while later. And when he was very young, January 12th, 1888, he writes a letter to his mom. He's 13. I'm going to a play called Pinafore tonight. So those roots go quite deep.
I served a term as office boy to an attorney's firm. I cleaned the windows and I swept the floor, and I polished up the handle of the big front door. He polished up the handle of the big front door. I polished up that handle so carefully that now I am the ruler of the Queen's Navy. He polished up the handle so carefully that now he is the ruler of the Queen's Navy. As office boy, I made such a mark that they gave me the post of a junior clerk. I served the writs with a smile so bland, and I copied all the letters in a big round hand. He copied all the letters in a big round hand. I copied all the letters in a hand so free that now I am the ruler of the Queen's Navy. He copied all the letters in a hand so free that now he is the ruler of the Queen's Navy. In serving writs, I made such a name that an articled clerk I soon became. I wore clean collars and a brand new suit for the pass examination at the Institute. That pass examination did so well for me that now I am the ruler of the Queen's Navy. That pass examination did so well for me that now he is the ruler of the Queen's Navy. Of legal knowledge I acquired such a grip that they took me into the partnership, and that junior partnership, I ween, was the only ship that I ever had seen. The only ship we ever had seen. But that kind of ship so suited me that now I am the ruler of the Queen's Navy. But that kind of ship so suited me that now he is the ruler of the Queen's Navy.
If we perhaps are aware of anyone who has served in the Royal Navy, we might want to ask them if there's any truth to the song. This is White Cliffs of Dover. This was the biggest hit during World War II in England. White Cliffs of Dover, and if anybody has seen the White Cliffs of Dover, they are quite beautiful.
She's still living. She's 101.
Yeah.
She spoke to the International Churchill Society, I would say, 10 years ago.
I don't think she sings as well now as she did.
No, but you can go on YouTube and see a clip of her singing at the age of 97. And it's quite melodious. It's quite lovely.
Let's
She
hear
was
her
a
from
sweetheart of World War II.
1943.
There'll be bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover tomorrow. Just you wait and see. I'll never forget the people I met braving those angry skies. I remember well as the shadows fell, the light of hope in their eyes. And though I'm far away, I still can hear them say, thumbs up. For when the dawn comes up, there'll be bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover tomorrow. Just you wait and see. There'll be love and laughter and peace ever after tomorrow, when the world is free. The shepherd will tend his sheep, the valley will bloom again, and Jimmy will go to sleep in his own little room again. There'll be bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover tomorrow. Just you wait and see. There'll be bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover tomorrow. Just you wait and see.
Got to tell you a story. When I read nonfiction books, I underline and I make notes, and I've read a ton of biographies of Churchill. And anytime something about music would come up, I'd underline it, which is how I came to write the book, because I could go back in all these biographies and leaf through the pages and find what I'd underlined. But I contacted the Churchill, in fact, this was before I went to the Churchill archives in Cambridge, but I had contacted them about any records that Churchill had owned. And all they could find was basically his own speeches, and there were broken records. And I thought that was odd, that there was nothing left. And I was around 2006 or 8, along in there somewhere, and ran across an article in somewhere on the internet about they had found all of these records that Churchill owned had been in some kind of case or bureau or cabinet or something at Chartwell, and for some reason nobody had looked in there. And they had, it was a treasure trove if you want to know what Churchill liked, and I've got it in the book. And this record was in there, Bluebirds Over the White Cliffs of Dover. Well, we get to Yalta, and we've had a discussion on that earlier in here. And Churchill, Roosevelt, Stalin, they're going to meet, they met, to reorganize Europe. And after dinner, Churchill takes Stalin into his map room, and they see the troops, the armies closing in on Berlin. Stalin suggests to Churchill that Britain might want to make an armistice with Germany before the Russians get there. And Churchill, very hurt and upset that he would say that, moved to a corner of the map room where, with his hands in his pockets, he began to sing the opening lines of one of his favorite songs, "Keep Right On to the End of the Road." And this is what he was, and from what, obviously I've never heard Winston Churchill sing, but from what I heard, from what I've read, he probably recited these lyrics. Keep right on to the end of the road. Keep right on to the end, though the way be long, let your heart be strong. Keep right on round the bend.
Every road through life is a long, long road filled with joys and sorrows too. As we journey on, how your heart may yearn for the things most dear to you. With wealth and love to show, but onward we must go. Keep right on till the end of the road. Keep right on to the end. Though the way be long, let your heart be strong. Keep right on round the bend. If you're tired and weary, still journey on till you come to your happy abode, where all you love and you're dreaming of will be there at the end of the road. Keep right on to the end of the road. With a big stout heart to a long steep hill, we may get there with a smile, with a good kind thought and an end in view. We can cut short many a mile, so let courage every day be your guiding star always. Keep right on to the end of the road. Keep right on to the end. Though the way be long, let your heart be strong. Keep right on round the bend. If you're tired and weary, still journey on till you come to your happy abode, where all you love and you're dreaming of will be there at the end of the road. Keep right on to the end of the road. Keep right on to the end. Though the way be long, let your heart be strong. Keep right on round the bend. If you're tired and weary, still journey on till you come to your happy abode, where all you love and you're dreaming of will be there at the end of the road.
Lauder was a favorite of Churchill's. He quoted him several other times in talking. That song was written, and I had it on the board, after his son was killed in World War I. Okay, Potsdam Conference. This is during the election, and Churchill is defeated. And so in the middle of the conference, Attlee has to replaces Churchill. Churchill goes back home, goes back to checkers actually. And Mary saw with near desperation a cloud of black doom descended. His mood would not lighten. They played the Gilbert and Sullivan records. Nothing changes. And then they put on Run, Rabbit, Run and The Wizard of Oz. I don't know what songs from The Wizard of Oz, it didn't say, but that cheered him up. And that was, what was that phrase his wife said, this could be a blessing in disguise, and he said, so. All right. His birthday in 1948, his 74th birthday, his family hired a singer to sing his favorite songs. She was an actress. And he listed a whole batch of songs, which are in the book, mostly music hall songs. We didn't get into the Harrow songs, but you got those a little bit from John. One of those was Keep the Home Fires Burning. So I'm going to conclude with Keep the Home Fires Burning.
They were summoned from the hillside, they were called in from the glen, and the country found them ready at the stirring call for men. Let no tears add to their hardships as the soldiers pass along. And although your heart is breaking, make it sing this cheery song. Keep the home fires burning while your hearts are yearning. Though your lads are far away, they dream of home. There's a silver lining through the dark cloud shining. Turn the dark cloud inside out till the boys come home. Overseas there came a pleading, help a nation in distress, and we gave our glorious laddies honor bade us do no less. For no gallant son of freedom to a tyrant's yoke should bend, and a noble heart must answer to the sacred call of a friend. Keep the home fires burning while your hearts are yearning. Though your lads are far away, they dream of home. There's a silver lining through the dark cloud shining. Turn the dark cloud inside out till the boys come home.
You know, it's ironic, I suppose, that the image of Churchill is as a bulldog. You get that, you know, that bulldog thing, and you think of him as being so tough, but really he had quite a tender, soft heart, deep streak of sentimentalism in him. So, well, that was some of the songs that Churchill loved, and in your CD, in your goodie bag, there's a CD of about 12 of those songs. So Thank you very much.